guys, what's up? Welcome back to Books with Bree. Today I have one of my favorite types of videos to do with you guys, and that is my top 10 reads of the year. I was unable to bring myself to rank those within themselves from best to worst. So today's order is going to be from which one I read first to the last one I read in the year of 2025 instead of from worst to best. So let's get into it. My first top 10 book of 2025 was Galatea by Madeline Miller. This was a 5-star read immediately. It is short, it is thrilling, and you have no idea what's going on the entire time. Plus, it is based off of Greek mythology. I couldn't have asked for a better Greek mythology retelling from Madeline Miller at all. Madeline Miller has very quickly become my favorite Greek mythology reteller in the adult genre. Rick Riordan will always be top tier in the young adult genre. But for adults, Madeline Miller is peak Greek mythology retellings, and I don't think I can take argument on that, but to each their own. Next, I went from reading Galatea in January to again in March finding another top 10 of the year, which was the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This was one of the first sci-fi books that I was really able to consume. I read every single book in this series, and I can't pick a specific one to narrow down the list, so my loophole is the entire series. I gave basically every book in this series a 4 or 5-star read. I think the narration of Murderbot himself as a character is so absolutely hilarious, and I don't think I've read another book where the narration is just this naturally comedic while still adhering to the plot and not diverting too much. And the characters and relationships that we get to see built throughout this story is phenomenal. I am so attached to these characters, and I can't wait for the next couple to come out. I need to get more because right now I only have this edition, which is books 1 and 2, but there are several more, and I love these covers. And I watched the show that Apple TV came out with for the Murderbot Diaries with Alexander Skarsgård. I will always obsess about this man. And it is so funny. He was literally the perfect cast for the role of Murderbot. And every other cast that they made in that show as well, I feel was very intentional and very, very well done. Like, I don't think I could imagine anyone else playing Menza in the show whatsoever. The people they got to play these characters are almost exactly what I imagined in my head, except as real people, because for some reason when I read books, most of the time they show up in my head animated. But we don't need to talk about that right now. So it seems March was a very good reading month for me because the third book on this list is Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it is so insanely unique of a magic system, of a plot line. The general breakdown of the plot is very basic, but the way this author manages to execute the story she is telling is so unique, and I don't think I've read another book that has made me feel the same way that Blood Over Bright Haven has made me feel. There is so much commentary on the society and our society spread throughout it, and it is literally the basis of the entire story, the entire plot. It is a fantasy, and there is a sprinkle ever so light of a romance that you don't really get fulfillment with, because that is not the point of the book. That is not the point of the plot or the story that is trying to be told. And if I see it being marketed and pushed as a romantasy book, I feel like that is just doing a great disservice to what this book is trying to talk about. The next top book of 2025 that I read was in April, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Again, I think all of the books on this list were 5 out of 5 stars. But I had put off reading this book for so long because I have read a lot of authors where the first book I read by them is an all-time favorite, which for Taylor Jenkins Reid was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. But I am usually very disappointed with other books that I read by the authors, and so I was a little worried to pick up Daisy Jones and the Six, on top of the fact that it's not something I would usually pick up. But I finally picked it up this year, and holy was I blown away. I should have known from the very beginning, knowing it's very loosely based off of Stevie Nicks, that I was going to be obsessed. I absolutely adored Daisy, and I adored Camilla. She was honestly the best character in the entire book, even though Daisy is the main character. I think Camilla is the best character in this book, and the pain that Daisy puts her through when she falls in love with Camilla's husband is so heartbreaking, and the ending of this book will always make me cry, because you're telling me Camilla, spoilers, dies and then leaves a video will asking her husband to go find Daisy and be happy together. Ugh. Right through the heart. I've yet to watch the show because, again, I am so scared that it is not going to live up to the book. But I shouldn't be worried, because I have been stuck on Daisy Jones and the Six TikTok forever. And all of the edits are insanely spectacular. So I will be watching the show soon. And Taylor Jenkins Reid made it on this list twice this year, but we'll talk about the second one later in the video. Now, halfway through the list, book 5 I read back in June of 2025, which was Under the Surface by Diane Urbane. I absolutely loved this book. It was so spine-chilling and so well written. I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as I did. I thought the concept was so cool, but I knew it was going to have to be executed correctly, and Diane Urbane did a phenomenal job. I had never heard about this story, but apparently it is based off of this influencer who got lost in the catacombs of Paris. And the book takes a lot of liberties, because I am assuming there is no cult living in the catacombs of Paris that is kidnapping people and sacrificing them as a way to protect the city of Paris from collapsing in on itself and basically dying. But this book was so phenomenal. I enjoyed that aspect of the cult in the catacombs. I thought it was so well done, and it added another layer of horror to the already suspenseful and terrifying experience of getting lost in the catacombs. The next book on this list is The Corruption of Hollis Brown by Kay Ankrum, which is also the author of Icarus, which I have yet to read, but plan to at some point soon. But this book is a unique paranormal possession romance in the YA genre. While it explores this plotline of the main character falling in love with the creature spirit that has possessed him, there is also this underlying plot that we get to see about the different secrets that this town has and the history that it has, and the whole message is to just move forward, to do better. And I loved this book so much. I had no idea what to expect when I went into this book. And again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because obviously it's on my top books of the year and it deserved no less. I would recommend this to anyone looking for a story that is so unique. I've never read anything like this, like, ever, and I don't know if I ever will. Like, I don't know if I'll ever read another book like this again, but I wish there were more books like this. Almost immediately after reading The Corruption of Hollis Brown, I picked up Someone to Build a Nest In by John Wiswell, and I was so excited to pick this up from the synopsis alone, and then on top of it, my boyfriend read this one right before me and was obsessed with it. This is basically a story about a creature who is looking for somebody to lay her eggs in and finds this woman that she thinks would be perfect. And every time she's like, oh, I should do it, she slowly starts falling in love with her, and in the end she realizes she doesn't need to build a nest in her. Like, they get to be together, and it's so sweet and cool, but it's so unique because the creature doesn't have a body. For the 8th book on this list, we are back to Taylor Jenkins Reid with Atmosphere. This is basically lesbian astronauts in the 80s. That's all I needed to hear to pick this book up. Like, literally all I needed to hear. It was such an emotional roller coaster. I loved the romance that is between the two main astronauts, but I also so distinctly enjoyed the plotline we get to see about the main character's relationship with her sister and her sister's daughter, who she ends up raising by the end. And it is just such an emotional roller coaster because the story is framed around this one incident that is actively happening in the present time of the story, while going back and forth between that and the main character and her love interests training and meeting to be astronauts and falling in love. And it's so devastating, this event that the story is going back to in its present time, because the main character, Joan, is on Earth in the station while her love interest is up in space in a spacecraft that is actively, like, either she's gonna die or she's gonna make it home alive. And they have no idea which is going to happen because things are going very, very wrong and people are dying. I sobbed basically the last 100 to 60 pages of this book, which tracks pretty consistently with Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I have read before, because I did the same thing with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I did the same thing with Daisy Jones and The Six. The last 2 books on this list I have been dying to talk about on here. Like, they are all-time favorites. I will be reading them again, and I will be talking about them all of the time and pushing them on anyone and everyone I possibly can. So the first of these two is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I read this back in November and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It starts off following the first main character, Maria, as she becomes a vampire, and then we transition to London during like Bridgerton era, where we meet Charlotte, and then we again transition to more current times where we meet Alice. And we follow these three girls and their interactions and connections with vampires. It is such a unique story, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I was obsessed with Maria. She is definitely a problem. The whole book, she is a problem. And Charlotte becomes a problem. And even though I wasn't a fan of the ending, I think it's exactly what the book needed. Like, Alice was the only one to win, and I personally don't even think she did. Like, I don't want to give away too many spoilers because this is a relatively newer book, and I want all of you guys to be able to enjoy it the same way I did without too many spoilers. But it is very interesting, very well constructed, and again, very, very gay. Which I love. I'm obsessed. And I think this might be my favorite V.E. Schwab book yet, but I haven't read all of her books, so I can't say that for sure. And the final book on my top reads of 2025 was The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This was a monster of a read, okay? And it has been on my shelf since I was in high school, which I am now 22, almost 23, and I can't believe I put off reading this so long. The most bare bones description of this book that I could give you guys that is the most complete is lesbians preventing dragons from taking over the government. It is the most perfect description of this book ever. The lore and the world building in this story was so insane. And don't get me started on the fact that the prequel Among the Burning Flowers was so good. I personally don't want to hear any complaints about the final battle scene in this book, because I have seen a lot of people talk about how that in this book felt like more of an obligation, because this is mostly politics. You get to probably about here before they actually start fighting. And personally, I think Samantha Shannon has completely made up for that with the prequel Among the Burning Flowers, because almost from page 1 to the end is a complete battle against the dragons. This book was so well constructed, so politically complex, and so rich in world building and lore, and I want a sequel. I want it now, and I need it now. Please, please, please. Alright guys, those were my top 10 books of 2025. I hope you enjoyed. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have read any of these or what your guys' top reads of last year were. I'm really interested to see. I'm looking for some books that I have not heard of before. That would be super cool. Thank you.